Hello everyone again. So this video is going to be touching on the topic of transgender rights here in Canada. Um, Basically, there is a LGBT friendly community page that I'm a part of on Facebook, and they had a recent intro for Liberals unveil legislation to protect transgender Canadians. So this is basically in regards to showcasing better rights for transgender people under the Canadian Charter of Rights, as well as the Canadian Charter Rights Act. So, a historic day for Canadians. Today, our government has tabled a bill which will lead to gender identity and expression being protected under Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and will also add hate crime provisions for gender identity and expression to our criminal code. Fruit Loop supports the swift passage of this important bill that will open up surgery for all trans and gender non-conforming people in Canada, take away gender markers on identification, remove barriers, and the ability for people to create hate speech towards trans people, and so much more. So after reading this link here in regards to the rights of transgender people not being discriminated against and harsher hate speech punishment, I went to the Canadian Statistics page basically to look up the Canadian Human Rights Act. So I'm just going to read this out for you real quick. The purpose of the Act. The purpose of this Act is to extend the laws in Canada to give effect, within the purview of matters coming within the legislative authority of Parliament, to the principle that all individuals should have an opportunity equal with other individuals to make for themselves the lives that they are able and wish to have their needs accommodated, consistent with their duties and obligations as members of society, without being hindered in or prevented from doing so by discriminatory practices based on race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, age, sex, sexual orientation, marital status, family status, disability, or conviction for an offense for which a pardon has been granted, or in respect for which a record suspension has been ordered. So if you take a look here, actually this is where I think the Liberals are proposing this bill in order to include gender orientation within this act to protect transgender people or non-binary people who don't identify as male or female. I mean, it's great that they're going to talk about including this into the act, but as far as I can tell, the sex and sexual orientation part would actually include gender. But this is based on the fact that I think gender identification is not a social construct and that it is based in our biology, aka our sex. So I think that this is already encompassing the rights of transgender people because they're still Canadians, they're still human beings who fall under the act here put into place by our Canadian government. So really this is just refining the purpose of the act and the definition to include the words gender or gender identification. So this really is based on whether or not we see gender as a 100% social construct with no basis in biology or science or sex, what one is born as, or we see gender as having scientific sexual foundation, which I do. Like I just, if you're born a certain way, a white male or a black female, you should identify as a black female or a white male based on your biology. Now, there are people who are saying it's all a social construct and therefore they can identify as whatever they want, or they feel like they're part of the opposite gender. So a white male was born a male. Now, this is excluding intersex people. This is just purely you're born a normal boy, and then they grow up thinking that they were actually meant to be a girl. Which is funny because if social construct of gender is not based in science at all, then why are they identifying as a female, which is still a biological sex, versus male? So that I just don't really get. So this is why I'm arguing that gender is not 100% a social construct, and then we can't just keep changing things here and there at the drop of a hat, right? Transgender Canadians are still protected under the acts that we have put into place to protect its citizens. So this is literally just redefining the definition and the purpose of the act to include gender and gender identification. but I think it's already part of it under sex and sexual orientation. Anyway, there's that. So this is just basically my response to this. My first comment here was, take away gender markers on identification. So what about those people who identify as male or female? Or are they referring to adding more gender identification options? Because this way would make much more sense. But to scrap gender markers that help define a large portion of the population completely, it seems kind of backwards to me. So in regards to gender markers, this is on licenses, important documentation, things to do with healthcare and anything to do with medical issues, right? We normally would always have male and female. So now they're trying to incorporate other options, as far as it sounds like, other options for non-binary people and LGBT community, transgender people who don't fall under the male-female category. So I'm okay with this, like allowing more options to be given to those people, because they are human beings and they do deserve equal treatment under the law. I do agree with this. But to get rid of these markers altogether, when the majority of our human population does fall under the female and male category, right? So what about their identities, and why should we get rid of those two very prominent genders, when they've been serving us for years, right? So that was my comment. So obviously in the comment section of this post, basically kind of started issues in regards to transgender people, whether or not it's a mental condition or whether or not it has anything to do with their sex or a completely social construct. So basically, I'm just going to read this out for you because I thought it was very interesting, and I hope you can get my viewpoint, basically, of what transgender people are and their gender orientation. So, according to this Iman guy, his answer, this is absolutely disgusting. State-sponsored genital mutilation now guaranteed in Canada. Gender dysphoria is a disease and should be treated as one. Most people grow out of it are mostly end up just gay. The trans surgery original hospital in Great Britain shut down because they realized how immoral it was. Seeing Canadians encourage people to hack off body parts for a mental illness that can certainly be easily curable. Canada is full of medical tyranny. A male, I'm assuming maybe feminist, at least a genderqueer male, replied, and then I had discussions with him as well. So here goes.
You are being utterly ridiculous.
His opinion is a valid one. There are many who see transgendered people as having a misconnect in their brain, therefore see it as a mental condition. It is a valid concern for people and society in how we handle transgender people. I, for one, will accept trans people in their outer appearance and desire to be the opposite gender, for example, male who sees themselves as a female, for example. But I disagree with the quick fix of just mutilating their genitalia in order to make that male feel female. I am willing to respect a transgender who understands that even though they feel like the other gender, that does not change your sex. It is in our very DNA whether or not you are male or female. And DNA you can't change, no matter what you do to our bodies, such as dress up as the opposite sex or mutilate our genitalia. I believe we need to help trans people and of course give them the same rights as regular people. They're human after all. But I don't think just manipulating their body parts as a band-aid solution is the way to go. The suicide rate amongst transgender people is high, even with surgery. That is a problem for me. If someone is transgender, that is their right. However, they need to know every option before they just start pumping their body with extra hormones or cut off their body parts. They need to think this through. And then a woman named Kathy piped in.
You need to do more research. I have personally met and am friends with transgender people, and you don't know what you're talking about. By the way, transgendered men don't get things chopped off.
Steph replies.
Besides the 2-year wait time to get gender reassignment surgery, all people looking to obtain a referral for the surgery must meet with doctors at one of a handful of approved medical centers multiple times before they even prescribe hormones. Your view of a dystopian state where genital mutilation is a quick fix is a disturbing and purely fictional one.
And then Rob.
Who the fuck are you to tell people what they should do with their bodies? I assume you also consider any sort of surgery that improves quality of life but isn't strictly necessary to be mutilation Oh, and the suicide rate is high because of people like you. Fuck off. Oh, and a little FYI for you, since you're apparently ignorant on the topic. Many people who transition never actually get bottom surgery. Blew your tiny little mind there, huh?
To which Eamon replies, a couple of years back, a trans person was my closest friend. I smoked weed in the bathroom with her. If you want to go ahead and chop your dick off or get a doctor to put Drano in your eyes if you think you are transabled, I don't care. I just don't want tax dollars paying for it. It is disgusting that you encourage this mutilating surgery based on superstition and mental illness. There are only two genders and they are given at birth. I strongly believe we shouldn't be encouraging a surgery that doesn't help the mental health of most people, if anyone. Suicide rates only get worse with transitioning, to which he provides a link for a YouTube video about a former transgender speaking out. Straight from the horse's mouth. Gender dysphoria is a mental illness and should be treated as such. Alternative medical pursuits are banned in many places, which makes transitioning the only available option instead of things like therapy and drugs. Rob replies,
the fact you even use terminology like chop your dick off shows how little you actually know on the topic. Ditto for your only two gender statements, like you don't even know that sex and gender aren't the same thing. You don't think intersex people exist? Do you think that there are only two sexual orientations too? Anyways, done here. No point talking to a wall. Your answers to the above would just be idiotic anyways, so don't bother.